Hello everyone, this is Aussie Select and welcome back to the channel. There is now only 1 week to go until the 2025 Australian federal election. A lot, to say the least, has changed in the past 2 weeks since I last made my prediction video. I believed at the time that maybe the polls might narrow in the future and I was quite conservative with my prediction. But as you can see here, according to Sportsbet, things have only gotten worse for the coalition. Labor are now the clear favourites. I think they're even more favourites to win this election than Bill Shorten was, according to the betting markets in 2019. I think it's getting that bad at the moment. And if you might remember, Sportsbet actually paid out early on that election. I don't think they'll be doing that again. But this has been triggered by a couple of things. The first thing is by some opinion polls, some very nasty opinion polls, which have come out for the coalition. The freshwater strategy here wasn't that bad, this 50-50 poll, but we've had a news poll at 52-48 with the coalition down on a primary vote and ALP up. Some commentators have suggested this should be closer to 53-47 actually. When I calculated this myself, I got kind of like 52.5. We've got this Roy Morgan, which was complete blowout shocker poll, 55.5 to the Labor Party. And it has the Labor Party's primary vote more than the coalition. And then we had another disastrous poll for the coalition with this YouGov poll. I believe the difference was between the previous YouGov poll is they started asking people only about candidates that were running in their electorates. So a lot of the people who said independence before actually started picking parties, and this helped the Labor Party, this helped One Nation Party, and also a bit of the Greens, and not so much the Trumpy the Patriots, but the coalition actually went down 2%. So there is a indication that, yeah, things are only getting worse for the coalition. What we also got a couple of days ago was a surprise news poll quarterly. I mean, I don't know if I should really be calling this a news poll quarterly because it was taken only very recently, and the days that it was taken, it was a very short period of time. It wasn't over like a whole couple of month period, but what it has found is that the Labor Party are ahead 52-48 in New South Wales, which would indicate a slight swing towards Labor there. They're ahead 53-47 in Victoria, which would be about a 2% swing to the coalition, behind 46-54 in Queensland, which is about static, ahead 55-45 in SA, which is a bit of a swing towards Labor, and then ahead 54-46, which is a very slight swing against them in WA. So this guy on Twitter called One on Survive put together this little table, and what this shows is the difference in demographics since the News Poll Quarterly taken all the way back in October to December 2023. So obviously the Labor Party was already in government for a year and a half by the time this poll was taken, but it was the last News Poll Quarterly, as far as I remember, that was 52-48 to Labor. So we can get some kind of indication of how sort of the demographics have changed in the past year and a half. I really think that like if there has been sort of like a switch up of party loyalties amongst different people, it has been in the last year and a half as like the coalition has slowly unveiled their policies and Labor has also sort of unveiled what they're planning on doing in another term. So we have some interesting results from this. I think the most startling one is that the Labor two-party preferred has really died with people who speak languages other than English at home, down 6 points on the two-party preferred, and they're actually up slightly on people who speak English at home. Just an editor's note here, Cos Samaras has noticed in his most recent tracking poll that diverse Australians have very much moved back to Labor. So this 6% two-party preferred swing may have only just eased in the last couple of weeks, and maybe it won't be as pronounced as expected. And the Labor two-party preferred has really taken a dive with people in the income bracket of 50 to 100k. So I would call these people maybe like lower middle class. The average income is like something like 95,000, but the median income is about 70,000. You could say they're sort of working class or lower middle class, whatever you want to say, but it's clearly sort of not the lowest band because under 50k have pretty much stayed the same, but this sort of working class, lower middle class band has flipped very much to the coalition. As you can see, the primary vote is up there. Labor have actually improved both their primary and the two-party preferred for people who earn over 150k. This 50 to 100k bracket potentially could be like retirees with a super fund or something like that. So there is still some indication that sort of wealthy voters maybe swung towards the coalition. Like if you look at here on the owning a property two-party vote, Labor's actually gone down. They've actually gone up with people with a mortgage. And so have the Greens, actually, which is interesting because I would have thought that if anyone would be voting less for the Greens, it'd be people with a mortgage. But Labor have increased their vote with renters, and their two-party vote has down with retired. So that older vote, people with a lot of assets, probably has moved away from the Labor Party. I can't exactly say why that might be. Maybe it's because of the super unrealized gains thing that Labor was trying to do or something like that. But it does look like a part of Labor's base has definitely moved away from them. There's a possibility it might not be as bad as it was sometime in the past. I haven't checked all the news poll quarterlies, but it looks like Labor may have sacrificed some of their base in order to attract workers who earn pretty big income. Not necessarily wealthy people, but people who earn a big income. But Labor seem to be up within the age of parents. And there's a lot of people in this age demographic, 35 to 55. I think it's the biggest demographic. And Labor are big up with this demographic and pretty much down with everyone else, which is interesting. The Greens, however, are up with the 18 to 34 demographic. So they are attracting young voters. So this is pretty interesting. I will use this data to sort of have a go when we're going to look at each electorate. There's a few things I want to tackle first before we do that. We've got this new website called First Preference, which is a model for the upcoming election. It's actually one of my commenters who told me about this. It predicts 78 seats for the Labor Party, so they think Labor will get a majority. 54 seats for the coalition, so they're actually going down. 5 seats for the Greens and 12 independent. Some particularly interesting results that I've found is how they believe Sturt is going to go. They think that the coalition is going to win that one. And also Moore, they think the coalition is slightly favourite to win the one, but the independent's actually not that far behind. So, and you can also see Monash here where it predicts that the independent is going to win. So check out this website. I'm not sure on the methodology. I tried to read it up. I'm too lazy to sort of work it out. And obviously this guy's a lot smarter than me. He thinks 62% chance at this point that Labor get a majority. Seems about right. Apparently the best chance for One Nation is the seat of Capricornia, according to this. So yeah, take a gander, see, and tell me what you think of this website. So A Forecast has dramatically changed its prediction. Now has Labor Party on 52-48. Labor Party sort of closing the gap on primary votes. I think this actually looks pretty accurate. I think the Greens will do a little bit better than this. And is now also predicting that the Labor Party will get a majority and the coalition. Honestly, this is a very status quo prediction. Look at this. It basically just predicts everything's going to stay pretty much the same. This YouGov poll, yeah, really did it for it. It already had like Morgan doing stuff. And I told him that there was an error in Bullwinkle, and he finally has corrected it. Mia Davies now has a 2.5% chance of winning Bullwinkle. So all you WA Nats fans, it does include that now. We also had this new Redbridge MRP, which came to a bit of a surprise. I didn't actually expect it that we would get this. I covered this in the live stream a couple of weeks ago, but the field work for this was already pretty out of date by the time we got it, just because things have changed so much in the last couple of weeks before this got released. It does show a stark improvement for the Labor Party, but I honestly think that the Labor Party are going to do better than what this is expecting them to do. I think the most interesting result from this was Dobell, which had the coalition winning on that seat. And we also did see a big swing in that seat in the previous YouGov MRP, and a little birdie has told me that we're going to get another YouGov MRP this weekend. Looking forward to that. And then I think the other seat that really stood out to me was Sturt, where it now has Labor on 55-45. And after I saw this, I was like, oh, holy shit, okay. One and Survivor has done this little chart rounding up all, like, I believe the statewide polls and trying to work out sort of what swing would be in each state. As you can see, there's a sort of a slight swing to Labor in New South Wales, a 2 or 3% swing against Labor in Victoria, a 1 or 2% swing to Labor in Queensland, WA, pretty static, and SA, about 1 or 2% swing to Labor there. With Queensland, I always take supposed swings to Labor in Queensland with a huge grain of salt, just because polls have been really wrong on federal Labor in Queensland in the last two federal elections. I mean, they were really wrong in 2019, but they were also wrong in 2022. So yeah, I'll believe this when I see it, but I'm not sure about that Queensland result. So taking in all of that information, it's time to go through the map yet again. I am going to do one final prediction for the election, probably on Friday night after we get that last news poll. All right, let's begin. So there's an independent challenger in Forest. There were some good polls for that independent challenger. I don't think they're going to win. I think it's one of these sort of like secondary independent challenges. It's the ones that if the coalition are having a really bad night, that's when they're independent, might have a good chance. I think they'll make the two candidate preferred. Canning. So One and Survivor looked at the state results booth by booth in WA and shot me the two-party preferred in a bunch of sort of key seats, told me what the sort of equivalent is with the federal seats, with the state seats. So he actually revealed to me that Canning actually had a margin of about 54-46 to Labor in the recent state election. And if we were just going off of that, I'd be like, holy shit, like Labor's going to win this seat. The local member is Andrew Hastie, and One on Survivor presumes that it's mostly his personal vote that's keeping the seat with the coalition. Again, if the coalition is having a really bad night, that's when I think they'll have to start worrying about this seat. I mean, he's had a little bit of controversy because of comments he's made in the past about whether or not women should serve in combat roles. I think the coalition will probably hang on to this one. But yeah, I do think the coalition have to start getting worried about seats like that. Tangney. Now, this is one that I don't think it's up to the debate at all about who's going to win the seat. Labor's going to win the seat. But he did give me the equivalent two-party preferred based on the state election. And this one was actually like 56-44 to Labor. So if you had any sort of doubts about how Tangney is going to go, that's your answer. We did get these seat polls, which apparently have the coalition in the hot seat to win Tangney as well as Blair as well. I'm just not buying this seat poll. I don't think it makes much sense. I don't think the coalition has much of a chance in Tangney. But apparently there's also been some like pro-Palestinian people campaigning against Labor in Tangney. I don't know how much of an effect that's going to make. I don't really trust this. Obviously, I think Kate Chaney is fine in Curtin at this point. And then Moore is interesting because this one was something like 51 or 52 to Labor on the two-party preferred. And I think with the fact that Ian Goodenough quit the party because of lost pre-selection, he's running again, and he's having an open ticket, I think the coalition are really in trouble in Moore. I said a couple of videos ago that maybe like Ian Goodenough has a chance, or he's going to enter the two candidate preferred. I don't think that anymore. I mean, he is sending out volunteers. There was some like spat on Twitter I saw yesterday or something. There are people campaigning for Ian Goodenough, but I don't think he's going to make the two candidate preferred. But I think there will be enough voters who maybe like him and might be angry that the Liberal Party sort of shut him out if they know the story. And I think they will preference Labor over the coalition, especially with a popular premier. And at this point, like, it's looking like Labor could even get a swing to them on the two-party preferred nationwide. Albanese launched his campaign here. Labor are gonna take more. As for Bullwinkle, though, One on Survivor did the math, and he found that this one actually works out to be a two-party preferred of just under 50% for Labor. So if we went by the boundaries in the state election, Labor would lose the seat. However, it is a bit sort of complicated because some of the state seat ended up being sort of like a Nationals versus Labor contest, and some of the state seat was like a Liberal versus Labor contest. So it does sort of complicate things a bit. It doesn't have the drama with Moore, where there's like some like sitting member or something like this, but it does have another sort of wild card in that Mia Davies, popular former leader of the state WA Nationals, is running in this seat. And I have a feeling that she won't be able to make the two candidate preferred, but there might be a similar situation like in Moore where people preference her and then they preference Labor. I mean, obviously the sheep export ban issue is still a thing, and obviously that would be more of a prominent issue in the federal politics. It does feel like a big toss-up at the moment, but the swing is just not there in WA. I mean, if it's going to be anywhere, it's probably going to be in an area like this, but I'm going to give it to Labor. I think the Nationals running in that seat just sort of complicates things, and it's going to keep that seat with Labor. On to Lingiari. So I think last video I talked about sort of the national mood. Makes me think that probably this seat won't go to the coalition. I think that is a pretty good call. One of the Survivor thinks there'll actually be a swing to Labor in this seat. He did find some sort of data about like what the swings were and what the margins were based on the territory election for last year. And it's actually something pretty ridiculous where Lingiari is like 58-42 to the CLP and like Solomon is like 56 or 54 or something to the CLP. But you do have to think about sort of turnout here. I think probably turnout might be a bit higher around Indigenous communities in the federal election, although it could be kind of low because of disfranchisement over the voice situation. I do think Lingiari is again a bit of a toss-up. One of the Survivor believes that because they have a brand new member, there's that sophomore effect. Lingiari is going to move back into a margin which is a bit more safe for Labor because Lingiari is like a traditional sort of Labor seat. That's his opinion, and I can only go off what he says because we don't have much like good data for a seat like Lingiari, and I think his points do make sense. So on to South Australia. There's only one seat here that I've marked as a toss-up, and that's Sturt. And for the last couple of videos, I've been saying like, oh, I don't think the swing's going to be on in South Australia. Everything at the moment is pointing to there being a slight swing to Labor in South Australia. We know how popular their premier is. That recent MRP, the seat's going to Labor. Out of all the seats that I'm expecting to go to Labor from the coalition, this is the one I'm most sure about. People have been saying that for ages, that if there's one seat that's going to go, it's going to be Sturt. So yeah, it's going to be Sturt. On to Melbourne. So a lot has been said about McNamara. I don't want to go on about it all day. One of the Survivor thinks this is the most likely Greens gain. I just think Josh Burns is probably too popular. I just think he's going to win the primary vote. And then regardless of who comes second, like it's just going to be a Labor victory. I mean, that's just the vibe I get. One of the Survivor disagrees. He thinks the Greens can actually win the seats. But I do still think that the Greens will win Wills. That Redbridge MRP does not indicate so, but I just think it has the combination of factors that will lead to a Greens win. And of course, I think the Greens will win in Melbourne. Just on Wills, Wills is actually the seat where the Labor Party has spent the most money on Google ads, which indicates a couple of things. It does indicate that Labor think that they might be in a bit of trouble here. It also indicates that possibly Labor is lacking boots on the ground in this area, and so they need to spend money on Google ads. Look, a party can spend a ton of money on a seat. It doesn't actually mean that they're going to keep the seat. I think Labor know they're in real trouble in Wills. These two independent seats, both Monique Ryan and her Liberal competitor had pretty shocking campaigns. I think the Liberal one has been worse, though. I think the Greens and Labor Party vote are going to jump up in this seat. The contest will still come down to the Independent and the Liberal, and I think the Independent is going to win. And Goldstein, I don't think Zoe Daniel has much to fear with Tim Wilson, especially at this point. The News Poll Quarterly data I've shown you earlier is only pointing to a swing away from the coalition in these high-income seats. Chisholm is another sort of high-ish income seat, has quite a young population. I know that the News Poll Quarterly did indicate that there was a swing away from people who speak languages other than English at home, but I actually don't think it's Chinese voters. That YouGov MRP from a couple of weeks ago, that indicated that Chinese voters had moved back to Labor, and I do think it might have something to do with that whole sort of like Chinese warship situation. So I think these people that have moved to the coalition that speak languages other than English at home, I don't know exactly what demographic that is, but I don't think it's Chinese voters. I don't know if it's Indian voters or like Arab voters or like Eastern European voters. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's Chinese voters. And I think at this point, Labor Party have sewn up Chisholm. There was like some information about how like the two seats that the Liberal Party think that they could pick up in Victoria are Aston and Chisholm. Aston, from what I've heard, the Labor Party have pretty much given up on the seat. I still think that there's a possibility that the Labor Party could actually retain the seat. It might be a bit of a surprise. It's getting to that point. It is the kind of demographics that I don't think are really swinging to the coalition in any degree. I mean, there's a reason that the Labor Party were actually able to pick this up in a by-election. But out of all the seats that the coalition could pick up, Aston is the most likely at this point. But that's one to watch. Another sort of toss-up. Menzies, I think, will stay with the coalition. The local member is just too popular. As for Deakin, I don't think Michael Sukar is popular. I think most people who get anything out of Michael Sukar don't see him as a trustworthy person. I think his public appearances have actually done him a disservice. And I think this is the kind of seat that is absolutely moving towards the Labor Party as time goes by. So I'm going to call Deakin as another Labor pickup. The YouGov MLP also pointed to this. I think Michael Sukkar gone. As for Bruce, the coalition might have had a chance a while ago, but the Liberal candidate is just having too many controversies. Labor's going to keep that seat. So I want to go out to regional Victoria, and I want to talk about this area first. If you've noticed, I put Corangamite as toss-up here, and that's not because I think that the coalition are actually going to win it, but I just want to talk about this kind of area here. So this is sort of like Western Melbourne on the fringes of Geelong. Out of anywhere in the country, I think this area is going to be what swings the hardest against the Labor Party. Various indicators have shown that there's probably going to be about a 2 or 3% swing against the Labor Party in Victoria. I don't think it's going to be over here. This is why I think Deakin is going to go to Labor. It's going to be down here a little bit, but mostly up here. And I guess also Bendigo too, because apparently the Nationals are running a really strong campaign. I mean, obviously Labor's going to hang on to Bendigo, but there will be a swing against Labor in Corangamite. There will be a swing against Labor in Layla. There will be a swing against Labor in Gorton. Pretty big one, I think, as well. Maybe some of these like northern Melbourne seats as well, there might be a bit of a swing. McEwen is a bit different because McEwen is not quite as diverse as some of these other seats. It's a bit higher income. And so I know that like this has been sort of like a shoe-in seat for the coalition for a long time. The coalition and Labor have been spending a lot of money here. Unfortunately, this is not the area that I think will be swinging the most. This over here in the western side is where it will be swinging. So I actually think at this point, the Labor Party is going to hang on to McEwen. I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to go down to the wire, but I think Labor Party are going to be okay there. Insiders were saying such a thing that this seat was only possible for the coalition. And with the mood swinging against the Peter Dutton, I think they've lost it. Hawke, I think there's also going to be a big swing, but I think the margin is just too big. Gorton, I expect there's probably going to be like some like big like 7 or 8% swing there or something like that. Hawke, maybe we could expect something like a 5 or a 6% swing. These seats will become sort of the new sort of Victorian marginal seats. I mean, obviously, McEwen will remain a marginal seat as well. But this is what's going to absorb most of the swing in Victoria, and they're all parts where Labor Party are safe to lose a bit of skin. So just another editor's note, I just want to go quickly back to this tweet by Cosamaris. This tweet really does suggest that maybe this big swing that a lot of people have been talking about in Western Melbourne might not actually eventuate. He's basically saying that Labor's recovered a lot of ground amongst these kind of voters in Victoria. And so therefore there might be a bit of a nothing burger. And so maybe Victoria as a whole won't swing at all to the coalition. I'll also note that on the latest Redbridge MRP, there wasn't any change really in the two-party preferred in Gorton. So it has been brought up a couple of times about how there's going to be this big swing in Gorton. That might not eventuate either. Unfortunately, after I've seen this tweet, maybe the coalition aren't going to get big swings anywhere in the whole country. One on Anglo Election Insights lives here, and what he's said is that the biggest thing that the coalition are campaigning on is their fuel excise cut. My impression is if that's the thing that they think is going to help voters the most, and it's pretty clear that's their biggest policy, because like if you turn on the news, you see like every day like Peter Dutton's filling up some kind of like car or truck or something like that. Clearly, they think it's their biggest vote winner. I think if that's your biggest vote winner when like at the moment oil prices are actually on the decline, I think you're in real trouble. That smells of desperation to me. The Liberal brand is on the nose. I know Dan Tahan got sort of in the news the other day because he got like some immigration number completely wrong as well. I think that there's a mood for a change in an area like this. The Redbridge MLP did not indicate that the Independent was going to pick this one up. I just think the Liberal brand is just so toxic at the moment that even though there's supposed to be this swing in Victoria to the coalition, I think the coalition are going to lose the seat. So Casey, I already mentioned how that predictive model site says that Labor is sort of the favourite here, and the Redbridge MLP keeps on indicating that it's going to actually be really close here. Obviously, the swing against Labor is not on in this part of Victoria. I think the Liberals will hang on. Apparently, the local member is quite popular. But I would put this in the same basket as Canning, where if there's like a really bad night for the Liberals, I think the Labor Party could actually nab that one. And as for Monash, I think that Russell Broadbent can attract voters from all sides of the political spectrum, and the Redbridge MLP did give it to him. So I think that he will retain that seat as an independent. So actually, a bit of a shocker for the Liberal Party in Victoria. They thought this would be the place where they would possibly make the most gains. At the moment, like Casey and Aston are both sort of line ball. Also Flinders too. I didn't even talk about that one, but that independent is also sort of running a strong campaign. I put that in the same sort of basket as Forest, as like if there's a really bad night, that independent could pick that one up. Let's go up to Queensland, where I only have a couple of seats marked to toss up. The first one I want to talk about is Leichhardt. So the candidate for the LNP got into a bit of trouble because he made some like comments ages ago in support of Trump and against like COVID vaccines and restrictions, something like that. I mean, obviously, this does have the issue of Warren Entsch retiring, but the state coalition government is pretty popular here. And this area experienced really big swings away from Labor at that state election. Obviously, there's a lot of people that really don't like Dutton, but I think these people might sort of be able to sort of understand him a little bit more as a person. Dutton went to like Townsville for Anzac Day because I think he knew that like that's where he would be the most welcome. Not because he actually really wanted to campaign there, but just because I think he knew that he wouldn't get like heckled or something like that. I think that the coalition is okay here, but again, I put them in the same sort of basket as Casey and Canning, where if there's a really bad night for the coalition, they could definitely be in trouble. I think it's the biggest chance for the Labor Party to take a seat off the coalition. Dixon is another possibility just because the margin is so small. I do think that Dutton is going to retain that one. I think it's going to be quite late into the night when the ABC actually calls this one, because we do have like Ellie Smith running as a third party. The Labor candidate Ali France got into like some minor trouble because like she'd made like a tweet like 10 years ago insinuating Dutton was a Nazi or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that's not going to help. I think Dutton will probably hang on here. Look, I don't believe that supposed swing to Labor in Queensland. I don't buy that. I think Queensland will remain very much a coalition stronghold. And as for these seats here, I think at this point, I think it's pretty much certain that the Greens will retain Ryan and Griffith. The Redbridge MRP said so, and there's been some polls which indicate that there's only going to be really a minor swing on the two-party preferred between the Greens and the coalition in these seats. Brisbane, I still think there's a very hot contest between the Greens and the Labor Party. There's a lot of sort of data that does indicate the Labor Party has a very good chance of picking this one up. The demographics have kind of shifted a bit. Older voters have moved in and younger voters have moved out. Maybe there's like, I don't know, less renters and more owner-occupiers now or something like that. I just think the Greens are doing a really good campaign, and I just don't see sort of like it's any kind of shift towards the Labor Party. Like, I think that the only reason the Labor Party's primary vote is not doing too badly is because the coalition's primary vote is just doing so horse shit, you know? Like, Anthony Albanese is still underwater on approvals, and he's only 10 to 15 points ahead on preferred prime minister against Dutton. With how bad the Dutton campaign has been and sort of how lowly people think of Dutton, you would expect Albo to be a fair bit more popular than he is, and he isn't. So I don't think people really like Labor that much, at least compared to the Greens, who at the Queensland state election at that point, they were definitely pretty weakened. They had a lot of attacks from both Labor and the coalition at that point. I think they've really patched things up. I think they've run a really strong campaign. I think they'll maintain the seat of Brisbane, in my opinion. But it'll be close. It'll be close. And as for McPherson, again, I'll put in the same camp as Forrest and Flinders, where if Liberal having a shock at night, the independent has a really good chance, but I think the coalition will probably hang on to that seat. So I'm actually predicting a status quo result in Queensland. Very boring. Queensland is the place where I think Dutton's message will be given sort of like a thumbs up, not like a really strong thumbs up, just sort of like a subtle thumbs up. I don't think anyone's going to particularly get hurt, but I don't think anyone's going to make any gains either. So let's move on to New South Wales. So I want to talk about this area first, the Hunter sort of Central Coast region. Somebody got really mad when I called like Patterson and Hunter like the Central Coast region in one of my videos. I don't know if it was the Rail video or something like that. Like, I apologize. It's a different region, and the Newcastle region is also different as well. But anyway, like in my opinion, it's all the same thing, because we were seeing earlier in the year some real trouble for Labor Party in this area. The Redbridge MRP did indicate also that Labor were having some issues, like in Dobell, they had the coalition ahead. I think this is an indication more of the Redbridge being a little bit out of date, in my opinion. I think that Labor Party are mostly patched up any problems that they had here. I think that there are younger people maybe leaving these kind of areas, and some sort of like retirees moving into some of these beachside sort of areas up here on the Central Coast. Like Albo himself has bought that like beachside mansion in Robertson. So yeah, there is a factor of like an aging population in these areas. But even Patterson, like at this point, I don't think that the coalition are picking it up. Like, it's still possible. There is like cost of living anger definitely in a place like Paterson, which makes me think like, oh, maybe the coalition could get it. But ScoMo didn't even win this seat in 2019. If ScoMo can't win this seat, like if Dunn ran a really good campaign, he could absolutely get those voters onto his side. I just think that enough people will either dislike him or be apathetic to him that they won't vote for him. Unfortunately for him. But yeah, if one seat does go out of here, it would be Paterson. But I think it's somewhat unlikely at this point. So Berowra, there is sort of some like shakiness within the Liberal Party in this seat. It is the kind of seat that is absolutely moving more towards the left as time goes by. I think probably the Liberal Party will hang on at this point, but yeah, there will be a bit of a swing against them there. Bradfield, I gave this to the Liberal Party last video. Not happening anymore. The Independent will pick that one up. You know, she had some drama, but I think people probably are willing to forgive that in order to keep the Libs out of winning this seat. I think she'll win it on a narrow margin. And as for Bennelong, I gave this to Labor last time. Nothing has really changed. And in fact, I think this will swing to the Labor Party. The polls are indicating there's going to be a swing towards Labor in New South Wales. It is indicating Labor are doing all right in New South Wales. And that's why I've actually left Hughes as blank. Because this is another wildcard seat like Canning, Leichhardt, Casey, that on a really good night, Labor Party might actually be able to pick up this seat. I think this is probably the least likely out of the four that I just mentioned, but I just think because Labor is actually doing so well in New South Wales that it should be one to watch. The margin's actually pretty small. So I'm going to give this to the Liberal Party, but yeah, keep an eye out. And then Werriwa, we could get a big surprise in this seat because it does fit the bill of the kind of seat that is going to move towards the coalition this election. It's like low income. They speak languages other than English at home, but they're not Chinese voters. They're other kind of stuff. It's out of suburban. It's conservative. It has cost of living stress. But I just think the margin's too big and Labor are not enough on the nose in New South Wales. So I think Labor's going to keep it. Just again with this tweet, Cos actually name dropped this seat as one which has moved back into the Labor column in the last couple of weeks. So just more evidence that Labor will be okay there. And then we have Clare and Cowper and Richmond. Independent's going to take Cowper. Independent going to win Clare. Probably that will be Andrew G. That's what the Redbridge MRP indicated. And then Richmond, One Survivor actually thinks that there's a good chance that the Greens could actually pick this one up. These polls, which have the coalition ahead in Tangley and Blair, have the Greens ahead in Richmond. I don't know if this is versus the Nationals or versus Labor. There's a lot of unsure though. But this is the only polling indication that I've seen that I believe that has this seat going to the Greens. So I'll believe it when I see it. Two seats which I didn't discuss that I probably should is Gilmore, which at this point is looking less and less likely that the coalition are actually going to be able to pick this one up. It is an older demographic, and there is an indication that older people are still not too happy with the Labor Party. Like, I did give Wannon to Dyson, but that's only because he's an independent. I'm thinking maybe there still might be a strong retiree vote to the coalition as opposed to Labor. I think in the whole of New South Wales, Gilmore, the coalition has the best chance of winning this seat, but it's not even locked in at this point. And Fowler, where, as I said earlier, according to that latest Redbridge poll, Labor is actually doing a bit better with diverse communities. So Labor retaking this from Daly is an option, but again, I still think there is enough anger against the Labor Party that people are willing to give a seat like Fowler to an independent, just not the coalition, of course. So Tasmania, Franklin, with the Liberals preferencing the Labor Party over that independent. I think Labor's going to hang on to that one. Lions, I've talked about this one enough. I think Labor's going to be fine, even though AE Forecast actually thinks that the Liberals have a better chance of picking this one up. Which is odd because AE Forecast thinks pretty much every current Labor-held seat is going to stay with Labor. And then Braddon and Bass. Tasmania is weird. It's really hard to work out what's going to go on here. I think there's going to be a big swing against the Libs in Braddon, but I think the margin's probably a bit too big. And I think Bridget Archer is too popular. So I think the Libs will hang on here, but it's quite hard to tell. So the final result we have got is Labor 78, so Labor getting a majority government. This is the first time since I've done a proper prediction that I predict the Labor Party are going to get majority. Pretty much every prediction before this was Labor minority. There was one where the coalition were one seat ahead, but with, the Greens having like a block of like a couple of seats, then it still would probably indicate a Labor minority in that situation. This is the first prediction with the Labor Party in a majority. Coalition, what are they on? 51 seats. really, really bad for them. But they've had a shocker of a campaign, what can I say? And there's absolutely a mood for change that I'm seeing in the polls right now. It's just been one poll after another that's just been bloody awful for the coalition. I think that they could do worse than this. I think that they could get under 50 seats at this point. I've listed a handful of other seats that either an independent or Labour Party could win. It's just been a shocker for them, and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they need to have like some serious like rebranding or something else. I'm not sure what they need to do, but this is like, what, 10 seats less than I gave them in my last video. It's been a really bad couple of weeks for them, and the polls have been awful. There's been no narrowing at all. I expected some narrowing. There hasn't been any narrowing. And it's even looking like the National Two-Party Preferred might actually swing to the Labour Party. A forecast thinks there's going to be a slight swing against the Labour Party on the Two-Party Preferred, but Two-Party Preferred doesn't really matter. I think that Labour could only win 52-48 on the Two-Party Preferred, and the coalition to get like this much of a shocker of a result. You might also notice that like the Liberal Party like only just have more seats here than the LNP. I understand this is like a pretty like drastic prediction, but there's been some drastic polls. So I have to reflect that. I can't just be conservative forever and hedge my bets. I have to call things as I see them. I think Labour Party are basically going to get a status quo result. This is pretty much a status quo result. But I think the coalition are going to go backwards. And this will see the end of Peter Dutton. I think Peter Dutton's gone. He might not lose his seat. There's a good chance he'll keep his seat. And I think there's a good chance that in Queensland, the coalition will hold up pretty strongly. But I think there's going to be a definite loss for the coalition. The very worst result for Labour, let's say that like the coalition just somehow managed to win, like, I don't know, like Patterson, Hewen, retain Deakin, win Bullwinkle, I don't know, somehow win Hawke or something, I don't know, like maybe win Lingiari. Even if that happens, it's going to be Labour minority. Like, it's over. The election is over. I'm calling the election. It's over. The coalition are not going to win. It's going to be either Labour minority, they'll be on like something like 72 or 73 seats at the very worst, or the Labour Party are going to have a majority by a couple of seats, or the Labour Party could get into the early 80s or mid 80s, honestly, at this point. I don't know what to think about Queensland. I just don't think Queensland is ever going to fucking move, because these regional seats are just so rusted on to the coalition at this point. What Dutton is saying is it might actually like appeal to these guys. These guys might say like, oh yeah, Dutton, he's totally right. He's totally an honest bloke. Like, everything he says like makes perfect fucking sense. I can imagine these people here in Queensland saying this, and in like northern Brisbane and the Gold Coast and stuff like that, and then the rest of the country going like, yeah, I don't know about this. I could totally imagine that. But anyway, I'm not going to do the Senate in this video. I just think it's too much to do in one video. That will be coming out soon. That Senate video will be a lot shorter than the previous one, because I've talked my ass off too much in the past, but it does need to be its own video, and this video is already long enough. So yeah, I've called the election, guys. It's going to be another Labour government. It's over. It's over. Thank you for watching, everyone. I will see you soon with a bunch of videos. I'm going to try to make up for my lack of videos last week with like a ton of videos this week. We'll see how I go. And then, of course, we will be streaming live next Saturday. It's going to be fun. We're probably going to do some like drinking games, stuff like that. And I also have this bingo card as well. I might modify this a bit, but these are all sort of like things which I think are like somewhat unlikely that might end up happening at the election, but it could happen. And so I guess I'll get you guys, if you want to, you can generate your own bingo cards and tell me if you get bingo or something like that. Thanks again to One and Survivor for helping me come up with some of these. Some of them are like more likely to happen than others, of course. Anyway, goodbye, everyone. I just want to implore you to fill out this little survey thing, which is in the description. It does ask you who you'll be voting for, but it does also ask, the main part of the survey is just getting an idea from my audience how you think each electorate in the electorate is going to go. And then there's also some optional questions about the Senate as well. You'll have to take a little bit of time to fill this out, because it asks for you to answer on all 150 electorates. I just did it that way, where I made it all mandatory. Fill this out, and I'll go over the results before the election. I just wanted to do this as a little activity with you guys to see how you think things are going to go.